Good evening and welcome to the award ceremony for the 5th edition of the Dr. Juan Abarca International Prize for Medical Sciences. Allow me to thank the Abarca Thidon family for having trusted me with hosting this event for the second consecutive year. Please believe me, it is a true honor, because this award explains the great strides made in the history of science. It is a unique tribute in Spain with international reach, so that science is exceptional. And before I can start, I would like to express my greeting to the Minister of Health, Mónica García, the Ambassador of the Netherlands, the President and members of the Abarca Prize jury, the award winner, and very especially Dr. Thidon, Honorary President and co-founder, together with Dr. Juan Abarca of HM Hospitals, and also to their children and the rest of the Abarca family who are with us today. As you will see, as in the heart of this event is people, individuals. We do not want to forget that yesterday marked 1 year since the event. On behalf of the HM Hospital Research Foundation, the Abarca Thidon family, and on my own behalf, I would like to dedicate a heartfelt tribute to the victims of the Valencia flooding. May this moment serve as a tribute to the victims and their families. Love and support to those who are not present, and to acknowledge the amazing solidarity that emerged in the most difficult moments when neighbors, emergency services, volunteers came together to rebuild with what was lost. A big hug to all of them. We did not want to forget on a day when we are gathered here today to celebrate science, something that yesterday was the first anniversary of something that broke our hearts 1 year ago. But we are here today to celebrate science. This award, now in its 5th edition, acknowledges years of work, scholarship, and dedication of those who make discoveries that transform and improve our health. And this was the sentiment of Dr. Juan Abarca, who, through his enormous commitment with medicine and above all to his patients, is the inspiration for this award.
De enfermedades que aún nos desafían. En su 5ª edición, Abarca Prize sigue rindiendo tributo a todos ellos con la mirada en los galardonados, cuyos avances siguen generando un impacto transformador en la salud de las personas. ¿Por qué un niño necesita ser hospitalizado por neumonía viral, tuberculosis o cualquier otra infección cuando la mayoría de los niños infectados con el mismo patógeno no lo necesitan? Este es el enigma de la infección, resuelto gracias a la investigación de Jean-Laurent Casanova, ganador de Abarca Prize en 2021. Identificó más de 70 genes cuyas mutaciones debilitan el sistema inmunitario. Durante la pandemia, halló que algunos pacientes graves de COVID-19 producían autoanticuerpos que bloqueaban los interferones tipo 1, esenciales para defenderse del virus. Sus investigaciones explican una parte significativa de los casos y muertes graves por COVID-19 y abren la puerta a la medicina personalizada. Philippe Sansonetti, premiado en 2022, fue reconocido por su investigación sobre la sigelosis, una infección diarreica que causa entre 80 y 165 millones de casos anuales en el mundo y 212.000 muertes anuales, sobre todo en niños de países en desarrollo. Su trabajo ha permitido desarrollar una vacuna experimental con tecnología GMMA que ha mostrado gran eficacia en ensayos clínicos iniciales con 64 pacientes tratados con éxito. Además, Sansonetti amplió su estudio a la desnutrición infantil, que en 2022 afectaba a 149 millones de niños menores de 5 años. Sus hallazgos han mostrado que ciertas bacterias orales colonizan el intestino e impiden la absorción de nutrientes, revelando que la desnutrición también es una enfermedad de la microbiota, no solo un problema de falta de alimento. Abarca Prize 2023 distinguió a Douglas Melton por el desarrollo de una terapia para convertir células madre en células beta pancreáticas productoras de insulina, con el objetivo de curar la diabetes tipo 1, motivado por la enfermedad de sus hijos. Esta enfermedad afecta a más de 9 millones de personas en el mundo, incluidas 1,8 millones menores de 20 años. En 2025, los ensayos clínicos con cimislecel demostraron resultados sin precedentes. 10 de los 12 pacientes tratados dejaron de depender de la insulina justo un año después del trasplante y no sufrieron episodios graves de hipoglucemia, un logro revolucionario en el tratamiento de la diabetes. Pacientes expanden su aplicación a tumores sólidos, como los de páncreas, cerebro y ovario, y a enfermedades autoinmunes, como el lupus o la miastenia gravis. Además, las versiones CAR-T in vivo, aún en desarrollo, permitirán a los propios pacientes generar sus células terapéuticas, reduciendo costes y efectos secundarios, y acercando esta terapia de vanguardia a un uso global. En su 5º aniversario, Abarca Prize distingue de nuevo un avance científico de impacto mundial, el desarrollo de los organoides, una de las herramientas más prometedoras de la biomedicina actual. Estos diminutos modelos de órganos humanos permiten reproducir enfermedades y personalizar tratamientos, impulsando una nueva era en la medicina personalizada. La tecnología, desarrollada por el científico neerlandés Hans Clevers, supone un hito comparable al de las vacunas, los antibióticos o el descubrimiento de la doble hélice del ADN, y marca un antes y un después en la investigación biomédica. Abarca Prize, el Premio Internacional de Ciencias Médicas Dr Juan Abarca, es un tributo a estos y otros descubrimientos en todo el mundo que han contribuido de manera trascendental a la mejora de la salud de los individuos y las poblaciones. Este galardón con proyección internacional es hoy el más importante otorgado por una entidad privada en España y se ha consolidado como el mayor reconocimiento a todos los profesionales de la medicina y la ciencia, que a través de su incansable entrega trabajan para avanzar en la salud y el cuidado de hombres y mujeres en todo el mundo. Abarca Prize nació bajo la inspiración del Dr. Juan Abarca, que ha dedicado su vida a la mejor profesión del mundo, la profesión del buen curar. La vocación necesita de la libertad como medio imprescindible para el buen curar.
Well, I think it's time for me to introduce you to the winner of the 5th edition of the Abarca Prize. And he has already been mentioned, so we need to talk about his scientific findings. In this room, we have a lot of scientists, and I am sure that all of you have understood the magnitude of his finding. You've normalized it. I am still surprised. The day I was explained what the finding was, who had achieved it, Isaac Asimov was understating something. And that is what happens to those of us who are not very familiar with the subject matter. If somebody would have imagined that from our own cells, you could create a mini organ that you could research on and test treatments against diseases such as cystic fibrosis or cancer, you would have been called crazy. But Professor Clevers did not only imagine it, but he did it. Together with his team, he has created organoids that for the first time have been applied successfully for the first time to develop promising treatments for cystic fibrosis. The future pointed that this technology would transform biomedical research and clinical practice, bringing us closer to a more accurate, effective and humane medical care. Fortunately, for everyone, the future is already here with us. Let's have a look.
Es una de las enfermedades genéticas graves más frecuente y se presenta desde el momento del nacimiento. Está causada por mutaciones en el gen CFTR. Para que un niño presente fibrosis quística debe heredar 2 alelos mutados, uno de cada progenitor, mientras que los portadores, con un alelo mutado, normalmente no presentan la enfermedad. Se caracteriza por una obstrucción de órganos vitales por secreciones anormalmente densas, especialmente los pulmones y el páncreas. Provoca tos persistente, infecciones pulmonares frecuentes, daño pulmonar crónico y, en determinados casos, problemas digestivos y esterilidad en varones. La incidencia de la fibrosis quística varía según la etnia y es más común en la población caucásica, aproximadamente 1 de cada 2.000 nacidos vivos en algunas regiones. Su incidencia en España se estima en torno a 1 de cada 5.000 nacimientos, mientras que 1 de cada 35 personas son portadoras sanas de la enfermedad. Por su carácter crónico y la complejidad de sus manifestaciones, el paciente con fibrosis quística necesita atención especializada durante toda la vida. En 2007, Hans Clevers y su equipo lograban identificar un tipo de célula madre en el intestino precursora de todas las demás células intestinales. Con la nutrición y medios adecuados, su equipo convenció a esas células madre para que se convirtieran en una versión 3D del tamaño de la punta de un lápiz del intestino del que provienen. El mini-intestino era funcionalmente similar al intestino y estaba repleto de todos sus principales tipos de células, un organoide. Estos mini-intestinos se crearon a partir de las células del propio paciente y, por tanto, contenían la misma mutación en la proteína CFTR que causa la fibrosis quística, la primera enfermedad humana que se modeló mediante organoides. Esto permitía comprobar directamente si un medicamento logra corregir el defecto del CFTR. Al añadir una sustancia como la forscolina, los organoides se hinchan solo si el fármaco hace que la proteína funcione bien. Así los investigadores pueden saber qué tratamiento será eficaz para cada paciente antes de administrarlo. Ese descubrimiento marcaba el comienzo de una auténtica revolución en el campo de la biomedicina. Al ofrecer un modelo fiel y predictivo de la enfermedad de cada paciente, los organoides han permitido personalizar tratamientos, así como validar terapias en pacientes portadores de mutaciones raras del gen CFTR. Hoy se han desarrollado organoides de prácticamente todos los tejidos, de retina, oído interno, organoides cerebrales, intestino delgado, tiroides, hígado, estómago, páncreas, pulmón, riñón, corazón, cartílago, hueso, órganos reproductivos y músculos. Pero quizá lo más esperanzador es su capacidad para modelar enfermedades de nuevas formas. Los investigadores están creando organoides a partir de células tumorales para imitar los cánceres e incluso están introduciendo mutaciones específicas en organoides hechos de tejido sano para estudiar cómo surge el cáncer. Tal y como ha demostrado el laboratorio de Clevers, los organoides pueden ayudar a predecir cómo responderá un individuo a un medicamento, haciendo realidad la medicina personalizada. En 2017, tan solo 10 años más tarde de su descubrimiento, los médicos habían desarrollado mini-intestinos para 450 de los aproximadamente 1.500 pacientes con fibrosis quística de los Países Bajos. Los organoides no solo permiten tratamientos personalizados, sino también otras aplicaciones en la investigación científica básica y en el desarrollo de nuevos medicamentos. Además, los organoides humanos pueden reemplazar muchos tipos de experimentación con animales. Mientras la tecnología de los organoides sigue avanzando, Clevers quiere algún día cultivar órganos que no sean tan pequeños. Mi sueño sería poder hacer órganos a medida, dijo, imaginando un futuro en el que los médicos podrían tener un congelador lleno de hígados para elegir cuando lleguen los pacientes enfermos. Este revolucionario hallazgo ha hecho merecedor al profesor Clevers del galardón Abarca Prize, el Premio Internacional de Ciencias Médicas Dr Juan Abarca, que hoy recibe en Madrid. Su tecnología de los organoides ha marcado un hito en la biomedicina contemporánea, como en su día lo hicieron las vacunas, los antibióticos o el descubrimiento de la doble hélice del ADN.
It sounds amazing, Dr. Cleves. Das freezer full of livers. It sounds great. And we know it is very complicated to create an organ at the natural size. But please correct me if I am wrong. You, when you were 14, you had a bacterial infection in your hip, and you were told that you may never walk again. And you did not only play hockey, but you also run marathons, right? So nobody can rule anything in life out. And before you come on stage and you receive the award, I would like to remind the audience how this choice has been made and how the Abarca Prize is chosen. The prize has an advisory board made up of leading experts in the medical and scientific fields, which is responsible for evaluating the nominations received, and they select a maximum of 5 finalists. The selected finalists are referred to the jury with some documentation detailing their merits, and the members of the jury debate until they decide on the winner by consensus. So it is time to meet the members of that jury. Allow me to introduce them. We begin with the winners of the second, third, and fourth edition of the award, whose careers you're already familiar with: Philip Sansonetti, Douglas Melton, and Carl Jung. We continue with Professor Pura Muñoz Canover, who holds a degree in pharmacy, PhD in biological sciences, and she's a researcher at Altos Lab in San Diego, as well as Dr. Sandra Mirna, senior researcher at CONICET, the Nobel Peace Prize in 2003 with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and Princess of Victoria Award for Scientific and Technological Research. Alongside them, these doctors, our most internationally renowned paleontologists, Juan Luis Arzuaga, director of the Joint Center for Human Evolution and Behavior Charles III, and co-director of the Sierra de Atapuerca archaeological sites, together with Dr. Leonor Ruiz Sicilia, family therapist and master in bioethics, and Professor Silvia Priori, cardiologist and researcher in the Department of Molecular Medicine at the University of Pavia and at the ICS Maugeri Hospital. So it will be her, as president of this jury for third consecutive year, the person who will now read the minutes of the fifth edition of the Abarca Prize. Professor Priori, you have the floor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to read the deliberations of the jury to choose Professor as the Abarca Prize winner. In a telematic meeting, the jury of Abarca Prize in its fifth edition, composed of Dr. Carl Jung, Professor Douglas Melton, Professor Mirna Diaz, Professor Juan Luis Arzuaga, and Dr. Leonor Luis Sicilia, chaired by myself. I have been honored to do it again, and with Dr. César Muñoz as supporting me a lot as secretary of the jury. So we have agreed to award the Abarca Prize to Professor Hans Cleves for his work and revolutionary innovation in the biology of adult stem cells, and in particular for the development of the organoid technology, which allows the in vitro expansion of normal and cancerous human tissues, marking a before and an after in biomedical research and the subsequent improvement of human health. His discoveries have had a massive impact. The pathophysiology of diseases and opens up significant pathways for clinical applications. Hans Cleves is professor of molecular genetics at the Utrecht University, driving force behind the Institute of Human Biology, and formerly director of pharmaceutical research and early development at Roche. Distinguished group leader and member of the board at the Hubrecht Institute in Utrecht, and also at the Princess Maxima Center in Utrecht for pediatric oncology. Organoid technology represents one of the most promising tools in contemporary biomedicine. Their ability to model human organs and to edit them individually makes them a fundamental pillar for personalized medicine. The work of Hans Clevers constitutes a pillar in recent history of biomedicine. By discovering the LGR5 marker and introducing gut organoid culture, he laid the foundation for a technology that today redefines biomedical research and clinical care. The successful application of organoid technology in patients with cystic fibrosis opens the door for development not only in genetic diseases, but also for multiple pathologies such as cancer. For this reason, the jury of Abarca Prize has found the translational capacity of his research to be of great relevance, not only for the effort to integrate research from different areas, but also for the development of a treatment that has been a true revolution in the field of biomedicine. With the awarding of Abarca Prize, the jury wants to highlight the importance of biomedical research for the improvement of the health of the population and the evolution of society, as well as the relevant contribution of Professor Clevers to this task. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Clevers was born in a medical environment, father, brothers, but he started studying biology and medicine. But biology with only plants didn't make him fully happy, so the optional subject of medicine was taken by him as an interesting subject, and he took a degree on medicine. He wanted to be a pediatrician until he fell in love with research. Then, very little he could imagine that he would be the father of a revolutionary technology that today opens the doors to personalized medicine that will cure thousands of patients. I invite you all to learn a little bit more about the history of Hans Clevers.
Hans Clevers, nacido en Eindhoven, Países Bajos, comenzó a estudiar biología en la Universidad de Utrecht en 1975 y en 1978 inició también los estudios de medicina, en parte debido a su interés y también porque sus amigos y hermanos se dedicaban a la profesión médica. Hans Clevers obtuvo su título de médico y doctorado en la Universidad de Utrecht, Países Bajos, donde actualmente ejerce como profesor de genética molecular. En la década de los 2000, centró sus estudios en comprender los mecanismos de autorrenovación del epitelio intestinal, uno de los tejidos con mayor capacidad regenerativa del cuerpo humano. Clevers aún recuerda cómo en 2006, tras más de 5 años de investigación, estudiaba la extraordinaria capacidad del intestino humano para regenerarse completamente cada 2 a 4 días, más rápido que cualquier otro órgano. Sospechaba que esta renovación constante se debía a unas células especiales, las células madre adultas. Aunque se sabía que existían en todos los órganos, nadie había identificado su ubicación exacta en el intestino. Los científicos creían que se encontraban en las criptas, pequeñas depresiones situadas entre las vellosidades intestinales, responsables de absorber los nutrientes. Los investigadores descubrieron una molécula llamada LGR5, presentes en unas células que parecían ser las células madre intestinales. Para estudiarlas, marcaron de verde todas las células que contenían esta proteína en organismos vivos, lo que les permitió observar su comportamiento. Los resultados aún entusiasman a Hans Clevers.
Nick Barker and I were looking through the microscope at the same time, and we saw some very small cells glowing green. We'd spent 5 years trying to figure it out, and now we both knew, right away, that we were looking straight at the stem cells.
Los investigadores vieron cómo se dividían las células madre en el fondo de las criptas y después migraban a la parte superior de las vellosidades, pero aún quedaba algo por descubrir.
We noticed that the stem cells in the intestine weren't behaving in the way you'd expect them to. They were dividing each day. We realized that if they could do that in a body, in tissue, then surely they could do it in the lab as well.
Y de hecho, las células madre comenzaron a crecer en un laboratorio. se formaron grupos de células de tamaño milimétrico. Con la ayuda de LGR5, los investigadores aislaron células madre de los hígados y otros órganos. Y así cultivaron con éxito mini-órganos artificiales, los organoides. Los pacientes pronto pudieron beneficiarse de este descubrimiento. En 2015, Els van der Heyden, diagnosticada de fibrosis quística desde su nacimiento, tenía cada vez más dificultades para respirar. Con 53 años y una rutina diaria de pastillas e inhaladores, se vio obligada a dejar su trabajo y sus aficiones, entre ellas montar a caballo. Ese mismo año, Els leyó un artículo de periódico sobre un niño llamado Fabian, también con su misma enfermedad, y cuya vida se había salvado después de que los científicos cultivaran un mini órgano a partir de una muestra de tejido obtenida de su colon. Els pidió a su médico que hiciera las gestiones para probar esa tecnología. Los médicos rasparon algunas de sus células y las usaron para cultivar una mini versión de su intestino grueso en una placa de Petri. Cuando ese mini intestino respondió al tratamiento, los médicos supieron que también funcionaría con ella. Poco después de comenzar el tratamiento, Els retomó su vida normal e incluso volvió a montar a caballo.
So that is a great example to congratulate you, sir, for your work. So now I would like to present Professor Hans Clevers, and I would like to kindly ask Dr. Elena Abarca, representing the Abarca Zidane family, together with the Ministry of Health of Spain, Ms. Mónica García, to please come up on stage to present the award. I do not have the award, though, Doctor. It is over there. So congratulations, Dr. Clevers. We're all listening to you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, so I've learned actually during my communications lessons at Roche that I should never start with an apology, but I have to apologize. I understand Spanish a little bit, but I'll do this in English, and I trust that the translators will actually make a nice version in Spanish of what I'm trying to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a deep emotion for me to take the floor at a significant event. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Abarca Zidane family, Dr. Juan Abarca Zidane, Dr. Elena Abarca Zidane, and Mr. Alejandro Abarca Zidane, for their constant commitment to excellence, innovation, and humanism in medicine. But allow me also to dedicate a few particularly heartfelt words to Dr. Carmen Zidane, co-founder of HM Hospitales, together with Dr. Juan Abarca Campal, whose legacy and values deeply inspire this award. Their vision of a people-centered medicine guided by ethics, research, and generosity continues to mark the path for all of us who believe in a more humane and fair healthcare system. I would also like to express my warm gratitude to the distinguished members of the jury that we just saw in the movie and who have awarded me this prize, with its president, Professor Priori, at its helm. And it's an honor for me to actually meet you. Well, here it says today, but it was yesterday, and we had a really nice time together. The prestige of the Abarca Prize rests heavily on the rigor and on the commitment of the jury who have awarded the prize. Thank you very much for dedicating your time, your criteria, and your passion to valuing the work of those of us who aspire to contribute, even modestly, to the progress of science and health. I would also like to thank the Minister of Health of Spain, Ms. Mónica García, also present here, for joining us today. I would like to call out her continued support for biomedical research and the institutions that make public medicine possible, of quality and of service to all. And of course, my recognition to Mr. Roel Nieuwenkamp, ambassador of my own country, the Netherlands, here in Spain. Mr. Nieuwenkamp's presence, I guess, reminds us of the value of international cooperation and dialogue between nations to face global health challenges together. Today we celebrate an award, but more importantly, a way of understanding medicine as an act of service, hope, and as respect for life. And receiving this recognition, inspired by the legacy of Dr. Juan Abarca, is for me an immense honor and a responsibility that I assume with humility and gratitude. So now it says here that I will recount some of the events that led to this unexpected discovery of organoids. I won't use the text here, but I'll just do it as I normally speak for students. So it's going to be a little bit of a lecture. I hope not to lose you, and I hope not to take too much time, so interrupt me if it's going to be too long. So first I have to say a little bit about stem cells. So as you sit here and as I stand here, almost all your and my organs have stem cells. Many of them still need to be discovered, but we know we have them because when an organ like the skin, when it gets damaged, when the flakes come off, those old cells that are dead will be replaced by young cells that are produced by stem cells. So in every organ, we know there must be stem cells. Now, the best known stem cells that have been used extensively in the clinic are the bone marrow stem cells. They make the blood cells. They were actually discovered essentially at the end of World War II when the United States bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Of course, loss of many, many Japanese lives. Immediately, but also in the years and the days and months afterwards, it turned out that survivors of the bombs themselves slowly but steadily developed anemia. They lost slowly the cells in their blood. And it was then realized that radiation kills stem cells, the blood stem cells that sit in the long bones in your bone marrow. And this rapidly led to the identification of those particular stem cells. They make the blood cells. And that led to a treatment, bone marrow transplantation. Actually, my wife, who is here, Evke Petersen, has just retired from a job as a bone marrow transplant hematologist. So she's treated many leukemia patients. After these stem cells were discovered, there were lots of studies trying to find stem cells in other tissues, in the lungs, and in the gut, and in the stomach, and in the liver, but that turned to be a lot harder. So we knew they were there, but we didn't really know what they looked like and how to define them, etc., etc. And that's essentially where the story in my lab started. So we were immunologists. I worked with, I'm not sure if he is here, Professor Balbino Alarcon. We were colleagues together in the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, one of the Harvard hospitals. We worked essentially on the same gene, CD3 epsilon. Balbino went on in Madrid to continue working on the protein that was encoded. My lab in Utrecht, when it became independent almost 40 years ago, started working on the gene. And we wanted to understand, essentially that was the question we asked, how does the bone marrow make white blood cells, the T cells, that actually Carl June has been working extensively with. So how actually does the stem cell do that? And it was a very general, deep question. Last week I met a number of former colleagues, including a Spanish colleague, Eduard Batlle, who currently is a professor in Barcelona. And we discussed how the lab over the many years have been making discoveries. And he said, well, you once told me when they had a hypothesis, that's what scientists usually do, they have a question, they define a hypothesis, and then they think that's the answer to the question, and they test it. And I told Edu, apparently, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, that no, Eduard, we don't work with hypotheses in my lab. What we do is we mirror an orchid with apple trees. We pick one apple tree, we start shaking the apple tree, and then when apples fall off, discoveries, we just pick them up. And so we're not biased in our research. And that's what we are actually doing when Elena Sancho is here and her husband Edu joined my lab in Utrecht. We've just been shaking a tree. We made many, many discoveries that were not immunology discoveries. So we were studying flies and we were studying frogs, as I already told you yesterday. Some of you were there at the dinner. We also made some findings in the intestine, but we're not intestine specialists. But then Edu and Elena joined and convinced me that that particular apple was the apple we should go after. We should no longer call ourselves an immunology lab, we should call ourselves a gut lab. And that's what we did. Actually, also, I was advised to start a small pathology lab, so we could do our own tissue studies. And slowly but steadily, we started understanding the gut. And you saw some of the movies here. We actually solved how colon cancer comes about. And at the same time, we got a hint how the intestinal stem cells work, how the stem cells that actually maintain your gut. 10 years later, I must say, after this initial apple finding, we found the stem cells. This was Nick Barker. Actually, he was in the movie with the mice with those nice green cells. So the mice normally don't emit light, but we made the mice, Nick did this, where the stem cells gave green light. And so we could easily see them in these mice. We could actually take them out. And then Toshiro Sato, I don't think he was in the movie, was a Japanese gastroenterologist. And me, we sat together and we thought maybe we should try to take these stem cells out of the mouse, put them in a plastic dish, which is not a normal environment for a cell, and then change the environment such that these stem cells will become active exactly as they normally work in the mouse body or in the human body. That worked spectacularly well, and this morning I had to do a few interviews, and I gave this little story that I talked with Toshi, so the Japanese postdoc. We had plans. I then didn't see him for a few weeks, for a few months. One day I walk into the lab, and Toshi is behind the microscope. And I asked Toshi, how is it going? And he says, fine. And I said, are they growing? And he said, yes. And here you see them. I said, yes. Why didn't you tell me? He said, well, you didn't ask me. It's a very Japanese answer. But anyway, so he then let me look through the microscope, and this is actually from a bit later, where we saw these beautiful organoids. And the word organoid means something that resembles an organ. So it's not a real organ, it's much smaller, but all the key elements that, say, make a liver in a liver or turn a lung into a lung, they are captured in these tiny mini organs, and maximally maybe 1 millimeter large. That was originally done in mice. We then moved to try to do this in humans, from human tissues, works equally well. We then learned it doesn't only work for the gut, but it works for many other organs. Meanwhile, many of the people that had been in my lab were going back home, including Edu and Elena, so they started doing this in Spain. They introduced the technology here, where it's now widely used. But nowadays, around the world, people are working with this technology. And to give you a few examples, and then I'll stop. But so we heard about cystic fibrosis. This is a rare genetic disease for which there was only one drug, and only some patients had access to the drug. And with the organoids, we could make actually avatars of all the cystic fibrosis patients. We could test which patient will actually respond by just making an organoid, do a rapid test on the organoid, and then go back to the patient and give the drug to the patient. And that has been very successful. We know that in principle this works very well for cancer, but of course for cancer there are already many really good therapies. There's a lot of guidelines, so there things will be a lot slower. But this is what we call personalized medicine. So make organoids from an individual patient, test the drug on an organoid, and then if it works, give it to the patient. That's one application. Another application that I've now seen at the company where I'm still under contract, Roche in Basel in Switzerland, is to use organoid technology not just for personalized medicine, but for every step in the drug development process, which is like a 12-year process. It's very difficult to go from an idea to a drug that really works, safe and is effective. And that's now starting to work as well. And the FDA in the United States is now pushing to see if it's possible to replace a lot of animal experimentation by organoid experimentation. So it's human tissue, it's a human disease, it's not an animal, so it's closer to ourselves, it's faster, it's cheaper, it avoids animals with all the challenge that it is to work with animals. But I think still it's a big promise, but still a lot of work needs to be done. So for this improvised bit, I'll end here, but the technology is really new. We're still all learning what it can do, what it cannot do, but so far I've seen much more happening in my own lab, but in many other labs than I could have ever dreamed of. So today I was also asked by the journalist, now what do you feel when you receive this prize? Now, to be honest, of course, there's a lot of pride, and when I see myself and my people on screen and what we discovered, I also always feel a bit embarrassed because it was not me. Right? It was dozens, if not hundreds, of young people, typically PhD students that are like 24, 25 years old, postdocs that are 28 years old, that spend a few years in the Netherlands. Often they come from abroad, Spain, Korea, Japan, US, other European countries, work very hard, and many of their ideas essentially then lead to the progress that we've seen. So it is a prize that I receive it, but I receive it on behalf of many other brilliant young scientists. And quite a few have gone on to actually start their own labs and make their own discoveries. And I hope that one day we'll see some of these people also on this stage. So the prize belongs not only to me, but to everybody who's worked in my lab, but also in the Hubrecht Institute, the Princess Maxima Center, and Roche's Institute of Human Biology that we have now set up to try to, as a real scientific institute within the company, to introduce organoid technology in the drug development process, which I think is going to be very successful. Also like to thank my family, in particular my wife Evke. So one of the other things that studying medicine was actually meeting my wife, because we were in the same year, medical school. To conclude, Minister of Health, members of the Abarca family, Mr. Ambassador, members of the jury, thank you again for this great honor. And with this award, you are championing the promise of organoid technology and the hope it holds for patients around the world, both today and into the future. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Congratulations. I would like to ask the Minister of Health, Mónica García, to come up on stage to address us. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to express my greetings to Juan Abarca, paterfamilias, the whole family, and those of you who have created a family which is larger than your own, Ambassador, Secretary of State, Commissioner, Minister of Health, dear friends of all of you present here today. I would like to saying, Juan, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. I've only received a dozen of invitations from Juan to be here tonight. And we have a quality, both of us, which is that we don't think the same in many things. But firstly, we really appreciate each other. And secondly, we acknowledge the points we have in common, which is commitment, vocation, and what my kids say, we're so motivated. We both of us are motivated and support and advocates of our national healthcare system. We both of us believe in social justice, equity, universal access to the main solutions to the challenges of medicine and science. And I wish it was always like that. I wish it was always this easy. And meeting together in the difference is a value and quality that all politicians should have. Nowadays, we miss that capacity of agreeing in our differences, of understanding people who think differently from us, and to be able to do, as what I normally do, what we do in medicine, consensus at a clinical session where we do not necessarily agree on the diagnostic or treatment, but we end up putting patients at the center, and we all work together, joining forces to improve the life and to give our small contribution to the patient's well-being. And this award is a big and a large contribution to remind us the science matters, to remind us one of the main anchors and certainties that we have today in a world full of uncertainty, in a world full of fake news, bluffs and lies. One of the certainties there is science, is scientific evidence. So today is one of the moments too, thanks to the hospitality of all the professionals and personalities to remind us something that is key. These awards, beyond the photo opportunity before the event, help us to remember the science matters, that research matters, that behind all findings there is a curious mind that dare to look beyond, to try and find that green dye at the end of the intestinal villi. And today that person is hand clevers. I think we are all impressed by the professional development of this Dutch scientist, the discovery of marker LGR5. And with that, he gave us a gift, a new way of looking at organs, a new way of looking at science. He gave us that little gift of science, which is organoids. And there is a little bit of poetry in this discovery, which is the fact that we can transform cells in organs with such a human goal, such a valuable goal of being able to research on drugs and to continue developing something that is small organs today, which in the future could be large organs. We normally say that science doesn't make big leaps, but small accumulated certainties that take many years to get there, many hours of research, many hours looking at the microscope, lots of people involved, motivated, committed with the future and science. And we live a time in which that conviction, the conviction of thinking that research is a safe bet for the future and a driving force for change and future. This is a need that needs to be more and more defended, and we need to defend it strongly in the face of negationism that covers all scopes of life. Negationism in science, in institutions, denial of truth on the future at the end of the day. And those uncertainties make us weaker as society, but also as human beings. So we need that anchor, a real anchor into certainty that will make us evolve as people, as institutions, and as societies. Giving certainty to researchers, to public university, to public healthcare, to people taking care of things that make sense for us and for our society. We have ahead of us fascinating healthcare challenges. We have challenges on the table in the field of research, not only with the research of Hans Clever, but with the research around cancer, advanced therapies, genetic therapy, nuclear medicine, immunology. We are at a fascinating crossroad. In Europe, we also had challenges, fascinating challenges, such as after the Second World War, when all the national healthcare systems were created, and we are very proud of. In Spain, we had a fascinating challenge in 1986 with Ernst Young, when the law on public healthcare was approved with the foundations of a national healthcare that is envied all around the world. And we need to continue making progress facing the new challenges of the 21st century. Climate change, accessibility, pandemic, mental health, aging, digitalization, chronic pathology. And to do that, we also need politics, good politics. Politics that dialogue, that acknowledge the other person's credit, that healthcare is not the trench, but it is to fight the disease, that we should fight the trenches together against the true enemies, which is the diseases. And we also have small stem cells, which are the impetus and commitment of all the citizens of Spain that benefit from the healthcare system, that contribute like small stem cells. And our stem cells are taxes. When we pay taxes, it becomes research. It becomes 112 emergency number. It becomes a hospital. Taxes become doctors, public civil servants, public employees, small gifts that we have that we can transform into the future. So today we celebrate the future, we celebrate science, we celebrate that as society we can meet and make our future better, we can make our healthcare system better, we can make our science better. We celebrate Dr. Hans Clevers, we celebrate research, and something even more valuable, the capacity to continue talking, to be curious, to research, to believe in science and public health, which are the best politics that ever exist. A politician and a doctor from Germany, Rudolf Virchow, said that medicine is a social science and politics is large-scale medicine. So let's continue doing medicine as social science, and let's continue doing large-scale politics. Thank you.
Gracias, ministra.
Thank you, Minister. And we finish. You must have realized that in his speech, Dr. Hans Clever always talks in first person plural. He's talking about we, our team, all the persons that I have worked with. And he's a team person. He plays hockey. The big band in Boston, where you played saxo, right? Is that true? And also the lab team. He also did a metaphor because he was impressed by a book about the world, and he compared his team with the voyages to the South Pole, explorations by Captain Scott, because he said that just like them, you, researchers, you are sliding on very thin layers of ice without nowhere to grasp on, but you get there. In your case, you are not Captain Scott, you are Amundsen. You got there first. Thank you for your good work. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.